Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and so I'll be talking about weekly hard stratagem number 22 in Space Marine 2, and some builds to easily complete this and just help you out overall. Now, this week we have a pretty difficult one for a lot of players. This one is on Inferno. The battlefield conditions are buffed enemies. Enemies have increased health and damage. Now, this one's actual percentage increase is a 25% buff to HP and damage, so pretty substantial and pretty difficult for a lot of players to deal with. Next up, we have a positive modifier with Unshaken. You do not lose control from heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back. Now, in Space Marine 2, the way no knockback works is that any attack that would knock you over will only stagger you, and any attack that would stagger you will instead do nothing. So it's not exactly what it says, but still a very powerful modifier. It also opens up a lot of perk options we'll get into later. The next one is pretty difficult for a lot of players as well. This one's called Press the Attack. Not performing a finisher for 20 seconds will start draining your health down to 30%, but finishers will restore your HP. Now, the actual HP you get from this is a lot higher than you would expect, but keep in mind that not doing any finishers for 20 seconds will drain your HP down to this low value, and a lot of players do struggle at fighting around 30% HP anyways, even though there is a ramping damage reduction in this game we'll get into later. I just want to make sure players are aware that any finisher will stop the 20-second countdown. This counts for Minoris, Extremis, Majoris, and Terminus, so just keep that in mind and be aware. The next modifier here is Close In. Range damage is greatly reduced, but melee damage is increased. When this modifier says range damage is greatly reduced, it is not kidding. You will do next to 0 range damage, it feels like at times. Just take a melee class for this, unless you're using like a tactical aspect, so we'll get into later. But that's pretty much all there is for the battlefield conditions. Time to get into the actual builds that will help you out on this one. Now, for our build selection and team comp, I would say the best classes are obviously Bulwark, Vanguard, and Assault on this, because like I mentioned before, Close In does dramatically reduce your range damage to the point that you will do basically nothing. Now, the one caveat to this is that Tactical is still very useful, even if he does jack shit for range damage, mainly because of his Auspex scan ability that is just one of the best abilities, if not the best class ability in the entire game, and the Precise Calibration Concentrate Fire combo I've talked about many times. This will buff up your Auspex scan to 195% bonus damage, and that on top of the melee damage increase for classes like Assault will have you doing ridiculous damage to bosses and things like that if you get an Auspex on them and then ground pound them, something like the Thunderhammer and stuff like that. So Tactical is still really useful. If you just want to be like a tactical secure stockpile bot with Concentrate Fire and Precise Calibration, that is up to you, but just keep in mind you will do like jack shit for range damage, but Secure Stockpile is still an incredibly powerful perk, and Auspex Scan is still incredibly useful as well. And it's not to say this class does no melee damage either, because you do have things like the Power Gladius and the Chainsword, which are two of the best weapons in the entire game, so just keep that in mind. Now, the two best classes for this weekly, in my opinion, are the Bulwark and Assault, mainly because they are primarily melee damage, and our melee damage is dramatically increased like I mentioned previously. The Assault Ground Pound does a tremendous amount of damage on this, and Bulwark also has other synergies here with perks like Seal Within. This perk reads, when your health is less than 50%, you will take 30% less health damage. This will periodically activate thanks to Press the Attack battlefield condition anyway, so really good option for us here. And honestly, damage reduction like this is pretty much free on top of the HP regen off of Press the Attack is an incredibly powerful option in the game in general. And overall, I would just set up your builds like this at the moment, because you really don't need Invigorating Icon on this battlefield condition with Press the Attack, because it says when the banner is activated, all teamers regain maximum contested health, recharges 50% slower. Getting HP back on this modifier is going to happen anyways, so perks like Glory Shield I think are overall better, or even Concussive Force. You want to go like full melee damage on a shield bash build. That's like a bit harder to use for a lot of new players. I doubt the players who are taking full advantage of this even need a guide in the first place. Now, next perk here is Inspiration. All team members in the banner's area effect deal 20% more damage. This perk or the perk up here, Rejuvenating Effect, are both great options. We do not need the no knockback of Merciless Resolve, mainly because we already have the Unshaken battlefield condition that has like a redundant effect for this anyway, so getting your teammates up with this is a great option, and bonus damage is also a perfectly fine choice. Next perk here is Defensive Mastery. A perfect time parry or block will instantly incapacitate a Majoris or Extremis level enemy. The cooldown is 90 seconds. This perk overperforms all the time, but being able to instantaneously remove an Extremis enemy from a boss fight can make the entire boss fight like 10 times easier. Well, not 10 times, but you know, maybe a bit of an exaggeration. But you get what I'm saying. That makes your entire combat flow go a lot better, and Defensive Mastery is a great perk for that reason, really on Siege mode and hard stratagems, just because Extremis are the big, disabler in most boss fights that gets you killed and stun locked. Now, Focus Restoration is an incredible perk as well. Every 30 seconds, all team members automatically restore 1 armor segment. This perk is really underrated by a lot of the community, but the big thing about armor is that any amount of armor remaining will reduce all incoming melee damage to 0 even from bosses, so great perk choice. This one is one of the best in the entire game on siege mode, hard stratagems, operations, you name it. The amount of value this actually gives you is tremendous, though I will say advanced conditioning is probably better for like brand new players, mainly because contested health management is one of the biggest things they struggle with, so if you want this, you can definitely do that instead. Now the perk over here, Intimidating Aura, Perfect Time Parry, deals air effect damage in a 5-meter radius. The cooldown is 5 seconds. This perk is just incredible. It's one of the best perks in the entire game. It is just free damage for your basic combat loop, and will one-shot and one-combo a lot of Majoras in the game, and especially on the buffed enemies modifier, having extra damage on them is really nice. This one helps out a ton. Now for our melee weapon selection, you can take whatever you want really, because Intimidating Aura will kind of carry most of the melee weapons in this game, but I do prefer either like fencing or block axe. Now the fencing axe is better for gun strike damage, and we would set it up this way, but if you want to go for a block axe for more straight up melee damage, I would set it up this way instead, because we do have that huge melee damage buff modifier from close in, and having all of these extra melee perks on top of the block axe damage down here is really useful, and same thing for the block power fist. The block power fist is just a ludicrously damaging weapon, so if you want to take this one instead, you definitely can. I will put up more Bulwark builds up here into the info card if you want to see some other options for this, but for now, these would be the ones I would choose, because I think that these are currently better melee weapons like the other options, especially Thunderhammer on this class, because Thunderhammer makes you lose your shield, and that does kind of suck. And as far as their prestige perk list goes, I would just take Resilience, Overcharge, Powerful Shot, and Masterful Defense, because these are just the overall best for this build, in my opinion. Now, for the Assault class, Assault is a pretty unique class in that he has the ground pound ability that makes weapons like the Thunderhammer significantly better than a class like Bulwark. Now, the way the Thunderhammer works on Assault with ground pound is that this weapon has 100 cleave versus the 50, or excuse me, the 15 of Power Fist, Power Sword, Power Axe, and the Chain Sword. And what that means is you can hit up to 100 enemies a single ground pound with the Thunderhammer. You can only damage up to 15 with the other options. This matters a little less for hard stratagems, so you can pick whatever you want, but for the most part, this one will just pulverize hordes. And if you have the Zealous Blow perk here that gives you 10% CDR back for every ground pound kill, that is a lot of potential CDR from 100 cleave on a Thunderhammer. This weapon also hits like an absolute truck, and this weapon also hits like an absolute truck with perks like Strategic Strikes for 20% more melee damage versus Extremis and Terminus level enemies, Knowledge of the enemy, and of course Overcharge, which is damage from held and charged melee attacks increasing by 25%. This perk does function on every heavy attack in the game pretty much, including the Power Wave and the Power Axe, the Thunderhammer's Aftershock and Ground Slam, and other options like the Chainsword Bash. So really good overall, though I will say if you're a player that struggles more, you could take Armor Reinforcement, but Press the Attack on this modifier does give us free HP healing, so if you don't want to do that, you can just take Overcharge and you'll probably be okay. Now if you want more Assault builds, I will put up a little info card in the corner on the upper right in case you want to hear more about that, but the final class I'll talk about here is Vanguard. Actually, you know, final class we'll talk about Sniper, but for now we'll talk about Vanguard, because he has the Bolt Carbine, which is still pretty decent for CHP regen even with the damage debuff, though I will say his melee damage is definitely lacking compared to classes like Assault and Bulwark. If you do want to go for like the full melee damage team comp, picking up perks like Inner Fire for all team members restoring ability charge by 15% by performing finishers on Majora's level or higher enemies, this will be an incredible enabler for your entire team of your Bulwark banner and your Assault ground pound. If you have a Vanguard in your team with this, your entire run will go more smoothly, and once again, I really don't think you need to take perks like Unmessial on this one, because you will be getting so much HP back from Press the Attack, and Adrenaline Rush is a little bit redundant, so instead I would go for the Tactical Prowess Zone of Impact combo, because this one's just overall better in my opinion. And also if you want to like stack up damage reduction because of the buffed enemies, you can take perks like Thrill of the Fight for 20% less health damage for 5 seconds on a parry, block, or dodge, or Conviction down here, which I would pretty much always take, which is a further 25% health damage reduction when your armor is broken. And this class actually has a lot of armor regen as well, thanks to perks like Launch Restoration and Restoration. This one giving you 1 armor back for the grapnel launcher every time you use it, and restoration just being a periodic cooldown on a 7 enemy in rapid succession kill. So pretty good options here, and overall the Vanguard is a great option because despite being the lowest of the melee damage options for the melee classes, he still does a ton of damage thanks to that close-in modifier, excuse me, and that's pretty much all you really need on this class. Now the final class I'll talk about is Sniper. Now, as far as the Sniper is concerned, this is way more of a meme class for this, but the Sniper does have a lot of melee damage if you build things like the Power Gladius or the Agile Strike perk here. This one says after a perfect dodge, the next melee attack deals 120% more damage and can be stacked up to 3 times. This perk does ridiculous damage on this knife when you build for like shadow stab boss damage like we do here, on top of perks like melee mastery to give you another 20% melee damage buff, with adaptability giving you another 25% melee damage buff on camo cloak, and the tactical ambush perk giving you another 150% melee damage buff on your camo cloak break. So a really strong option there. And the perk up here, evasion, after a perfect time dodge, camo cloak automatically activates that spending charge for 5 seconds. The cooldown is 30 seconds. This is a pretty fun synergy with this class, and even though I wouldn't say the Sniper is the strongest for this, if you want to go for the knife build, you definitely can, so I just wanted to mention it. You know, really the melee weapons that you can take are, you know, the block knife as well if you want, and the ranged weapons can be whatever you want, because it really doesn't matter, because it do jack shit damage no matter what. That's pretty much all I have to say for this one, guys. Hopefully this guide helped you. I don't think this one's going to be too bad, but I do think buffed enemies are difficult for a lot of players. Unshaken's a pretty nice thing to have, and press the attack, despite looking pretty scary, is not too bad, but just make sure you are aware of the close-in modifier, because this one will reduce your range damage to like basically nothing, so just don't take range classes. Heavy will suck in this mission. The sniper weapons are going to be pretty garbage, and the tacticals range weapons are also going to be pretty trash. So just keep that in mind and make sure you're aware of that. Don't go into this with your heavy class rocking a heavy bolter, or you'll probably just be trolling your team. That's pretty much all I have to say in this one, guys. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye.